be screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the third part of, What If Ichigo Enters Game of Thrones? Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Magi tale Welkin on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. At the crossroads in Sansa walked Lady, the direwolf nearly 2/3 as big as Gatsby by this point. The lady from the north looked at three girls sitting at the carriage doing their hair. The girls looked at her and then looked away in disgust. Sansa shook her head. My prince wants me to look this way, I must be faithful to him. Looking forward she gasped and stopped in her tracks. A bald man with a look cold enough to freeze her solid stood before her. "Pardon me, sire," she said. A metal hand took her shoulder. Turning she found the hound behind her. "That frighten you so much, girl? Or is it him they're making you shake?" "He frightens me too, look at that face." Sansa turned back to the bald man. "I'm sorry if I offended you, sire." The man twitched a nod before walking off, eyeing Sandor. The lady from the north watched the man go. "Why won't he speak to me?" The hound answered before she finished. "He hasn't been very talkative these last 20 years, since the Mad King had his tongue ripped out with hot pincers." "Although," Asher said, Sansa smiled, "he does makes up for it with his swordsmanship." Gatsby and Lady reunited again, making Asher chuckle, looking to the mute man in the distance. "Sir Island Payne, he's the King Justice." Her smile faltered slightly before Asher spoke again. "The Royal Executioner, Sandor, if you could please leave us." Sora squawked and the hound bowed before walking away. Asher took in a deep breath and looked up to the sky. "Nice to see the sun again. Come on, we're both taking our companions for their walks, and so why not do it together?" She nodded quickly. As they left she glanced back at the three girls. Their faces conveyed both surprise and jealousy. They headed south toward the river, more specifically the Ruby Ford. As they neared it the sound of wood hitting wood filled the air. Soon they came across Sir Napier leaning against the trunk of a tree watching Arya and a local butcher boy fighting each other with sticks. Sansa blinked. Arya, her sister turned and the butcher boy smacked her. Asher hissed, "That must have hurt." "Having fun, Arya, and I didn't get your name." "Micah, milord." "No need to be afraid just because I have a title. Any reason why you're pretending to sword fight?" "I want to be a knight someday." "Well then," a voice called and Joffrey walked in holding a LTHR wine skin and pulled a familiar knife from his tunic. "Pick up your sword, let's see how good you are." Asher walked in front of Sansa as Sir Napier walked closer. Gatsby began to growl. Micah backed away. "She asked me to, milord, she asked me to. I'm your prince, not your lord, and I said pick up your sword." "It's not a sword, my prince, it's only a stick." "And you're not a knight, that's a Stark you were hitting, you know that." "Joffrey," Asher called, gritting his teeth, "the wines affected you. You're asking a small folk boy to fight with a stick against a Valyrian steel dagger, a dagger you're not meant to have." "I won't hurt him, much." At that moment Arya smacked her stick into Joffrey's back. Joffrey turned and Micah ran off. Joffrey began attacking Arya. The young Stark fell to the ground. Joffrey held out the dagger. "I'll get you, you little." Nymeria pounced from the bushes and dug her fangs into his arm. He let go of the knife. Arya got up and pulled her direwolf from Joffrey. Gatsby came up and growled at the wolf Beach, who whined and sat. Asher quickly took the dagger before turning to Napier. "Nap, go get father, Lord Eddard, and a healer quick." The samurai nodded and went. Sansa looked to her fiancé. "Why didn't you do anything?" "I was about to before Nymeria appeared." "You were going to let you twin hurt the butcher boy?" "Of course not, I expected you sister to do something, and she did." Soon the king, plus the Queen, Lord Eddard and a few others arrived. The healer pushed Joffrey's sleeve up to examine the damage and the Queen became outraged. What happened here? One of the wolves attacked me. Joffrey said. Creasy turned to the two wolves with Gatsby. Asher then spoke. Arya's wolf Nymeria only attacked brother because he pointed this knife at her. The king saw the knife and readied a fist. Robert, Eddard called. Don't. The king sighed, lowered his fist but spoke with gritted teeth. I said I never wanted to see that knife again. How'd you get it? The crown prince remained silent, then Lord Eddard spoke. Why did the crown prince point the dagger at my daughter? Sansa spoke and explained, as best she could, the situation. Asher, Arya and Sir Napier all nodded. Creasy looked to her son, then to the Wound. The wolf needs to be killed. No, you can't. Arya said, hugging Nymeria tightly. Gatsby began to growl again and Sora squawked. Asher scowled. Mother, Nymeria attacked Joffrey for the same reason Gatsby and Sora tackled him back in Winterfell. I will admit she didn't need to bite him. Maybe we should put a muzzle on her. The Queen glared. We should put a muzzle on all of them. Mother, Lady and Summer are different to Nymeria. Gatsby held Lady back in case something bad happened and Bran and Summer aren't even present, so they should hold no blame. Both the king and Lord Eddard nodded. Ned, take you daughter and her wolf and DSPLN them. I'll DSPLN mine once he's healed up. Lord Eddard nodded and took Arya. Nymeria followed her MSTRS. The king turned to Asher who nodded and threw the knife into the river. He smirked. With how people are still trying to find Rhaegar's rubies, that knife would remain property of the river for ages. The king nodded and walked away. Sir Napier left the king's column to head back to Castamere. The rest went to King's Landing. Sansa watched with growing awe as the capital came closer and close. The three largest buildings caught her eyes first, the Red Keep, the ruined Dragon Pit and the Great September of Baelor. Slowly however the majesty of the capital faltered. First the smell. She held her noise to begin with until Asher pulled Godsgrief back and rode next to the cart carrying the Stark children, the girls' tutor Septa Mordain, plus their luggage and other important items, dire wolves included. He spoke. I would try and get used to the smell. Depending on how things go you may be spending long time here. She nodded and let her fingers go. The rancid air filled her lungs as she understood what her fiancé talked about. Arya could possibly return to Winterfell in a few years' times, but she as wife-to-be for the prince would more than likely live in the capital, and as Bran wished to be Kingsguard it stood to reason he would stay too. The state of the small folk homes went further to dull her awe. Outside the city walls lay hundreds of hastily built homes out of stuff other people threw out, a town made of rubbish. The homes inside the wall, while better, did not seem impressive either. She remembered the better-built homes of Winterfell. People there did not risk their house collapsing. Speaking of Winterfell, on closer inspection of the Red Keep, while taller, it seemed smaller in compassion. In Winterfell she could give Lady a walk just by going from one end to another. Here she would need to make a round trip. They entered the Dragon Gate. The gold-clocked man on the city watch opened the massive doors, and raised the portcullis. Sansa focused on the three dragon statues that adored the archway. Asher leaned in and muttered, "There always seems to be three dragons," and Sansa nodded, but only partly got what Asher said. They rode through some city streets, the house tightly packed and haphazardly arranging with dead-end streets and small alleyways. People stopped and watched as they passed. None of them looked like the people of Winterfell, all undulls, dressing in thin cloth of many colors, no fur about them. She wondered what the people thought of her. She would be a princess to them after all. They reached the gate into the Red Keep. The stone head of a stag looked down on them. Once inside they stopped. Her father and fiancé got off their horse. She mused on Asher, how unhooked both legs from the stirrup, bring his leg over so he sat sideways on the saddle, both pushing off with his hands and landing feet first, a bizarre way to get off Godsgrief, but if it worked for him and his horse didn't complain. A steward walked up to her father. "Welcome Lord Stark, Grand Maester Pycelle has called a meeting of the small council. The honor of your presence is requested." Lord Eddard turned the cart and looked at Septa Mordain. "Get the children settled in, I'll be back in time for supper, and Jory you go with them." The captain of the Duke's household guard acknowledged the order. Asher stood next to the Duke. I'd better go with you. I think I know what this meeting is about. He looked to his dog. Gatsby, make sure the dire wolves don't get into trouble. The tiger dog braked and then he turned his eyes to Sansa. I'll see you later, my dear. She smiled and nodded. The steward eyed the two. If you'd like the change into something more appropriate. Lord Eddard simply took his gloves off, but Asher spoke. I'd much rather get this meeting out the way before I do anything else. Marcus, lead the way. The steward nodded, turned round and walked. Sansa sighed as her father and fiancé walked away. She entered her chambers within the Tower of the Hand. She tested the bed, softer than her one in Winterfell. She rubbed her hands down the silk sheets, smooth as water. Lady barked. She looked back as her dire wolf and Gatsby snuffled each other before the tiger dog forlornly left, causing the wolf to whine. Sansa frowned before knelling and scratched the wolf's ear. Come on, we need to unpack. She picked up her trunk, put it on the bed and unpacked, Lady taking the thing handed to her and put them down. Sansa glanced but at her wolf. You really do like Asher's hound. Lady's tongue stuck out. Sansa grinned. You do realize you're going to be at least a foot taller than him. Lady gave her a stubborn look. She laughed and scratched her ear. I'm just saying it might be difficult for him. You're not going to reach pup-bearing age for a few years. I'll have to ask Asher how old Gatsby is. Soon she finished packing and put her case under the bed. Lady then jumped on the bed to rest on it. Sansa immediately tried to pull her off. You can't sleep on the bed, lady. Asher told me that Maester Parker from Castamere discovered the illnesses in animal can be fatal to human, and they can be spread if they share beds. Lady titled her head before jumping off, and lying down in front of the bed and whined. Sansa sighed. We'll find something for you to sleep on, don't worry. A knock came from the door and Septa Mordain entered. Your supper is ready, but I am afraid your father has not arrived back yet. Sansa sighed. It's something I'll have to get used to. And with that she followed the Septa out. Asher jumped off of Godsgrief. Sora flew off the horse's head and onto the prince's shoulder as he helped Gatsby down. Marcus Caldwell, one of the stewards, walked up to Lord Eddard. Welcome, Lord Stark. Grand Maester Pycelle has called a meeting of the small council. The honor of your presence is requested. Lord Eddard turned the cart and looked at Septa Mordain. Get the children settled in. I'll be back in time for supper, and Jory, you go with them. The captain of the Duke's household guard acknowledged the order. Asher stood next to the Duke. I'd better go with you. I think I know what this meeting is about. He looked to his dog. Gatsby, make sure the dire wolves don't get into trouble. The tiger dog braked and then he turned his eyes to Sansa. I'll see you later, my dear. She smiled and nodded. The steward eyed the two. If you'd like the change into something more appropriate. Lord Eddard simply took his gloves off, but Asher spoke. I'd much rather get this meeting out the way before I do anything else. Marcus, lead the way. The steward nodded, turned round and walked. The two followed on. Asher shook his head. Brilliant timing, Grand Maester. Here was I thinking I could get to my chambers, take a bath and change. The doors to the throne room opened and Asher looked at the familiar Iron Throne. The monstrous symbol of conquest as ordered by Aegon the Conqueror, forged in the fires of his mighty dragon Balerion the Black Dread, made of 1,000 blades of the first Targaryen king's defeated enemies, the king of the Isles and the rivers, his family and troops in Harrenhal, last king of the Reach, and those troops of the king of the Rock before said Lannister bent his knee. It's a good thing the dragon fire fused those swords solid. With the asymmetrical design it looks like it's going to collapse. Jaime Lannister at the foot of the massive sharp seat, dressed in his Kingsguard armor. Thank the gods you're here, Stark. About time we had some stern northern leadership. Glad to see you're protecting the throne, the quiet wolf muttered. Jaime brushed it off before mentioning a vulgar saying about the king's actions and the hand's duty. Lord Stark mentioned about the brilliant quality of the Lannisters' armor, not a single scratch on it. I know, people have been SWNGNG swords at me for years, they all seem to miss. Chosen your opponents wisely then. Jaime's expression dulled. I have a knack for it. Must be strange for you, coming into this room. I was standing right here when it happened. He was very brave, your brother, and your father too. They didn't deserve to die like that. Nobody deserves to die like that. But you just stood there and watched. 500 men, just stood there and watched, the great knights in the 7 kingdoms, and this room was as silent as a crypt, except for the screaming and the Mad King laughing, and later when I watched the Mad King die, I remembered him laughing as your father burned. It felt like justice. Is that what you tell yourself at night? You're a servant of justice. That you were avenging my father when you shoved your sword into Aerys Targaryen's back. Tell me, if I stabbed the Mad King in the belly instead of the back, would you admire me more? You served him well, when serving was safe. With that the Duke of Winterfell walked where Marcus went to. Asher placed his hand on Jaime's shoulder. Don't worry, uncle, what you did saved countless lives, you're a good man in my eyes, and the prince followed Lord Stark heading north towards the great outer gate. Asher looked to the quiet wolf, Lord Stark. Yes, my prince. A word of advice, the same advice I gave Sansa back in Winterfell, don't trust anyone in the Red Keep. Lord Stark's eyebrows frowned before the doors opened. The two entered the chamber of the small council, the king's most trusted advisors. A simple table around which sat 4 other men. One got up and took his Lord Eddard's hand, a bald man dressed in exotic colors showing his origins from Essos, Lord Stark. Lord Varys, the hand greeted. Asher knew the Duke of Winterfell didn't like the spider. Both he and his uncle Stannis advised the king to remove him from power. Varys served under the Mad King, and when the prince's grandfather Tywin appeared outside King's Landing, the spider advised said king not to allow the old lion in, but Aerys Targaryen didn't listen. I was grievously sorry to hear of the troubles you encountered on the King's Road, the MSTR of Whisperers said. We are all praying for Prince Joffrey's full recovery. It's in the past. Eddard said before moving on. Asher stopped before Varys. Quite frankly, I think Joffrey needed to be taken down a rung or two. A little humility builds character, let hope the right character. Renly, you're looking well. The hand called and the 2 dukes embraced. And you look tried from the road, the MSTR of Law said. I told them this meeting could wait enough day, but... Lord Baelish spoke. We have a kingdom to look after. I've hoped to meet you for some time, Lord Stark. No doubt Lady Catelyn has mentioned me. She has. Lord Baelish, the hand took off his clock and set it on his special seat. I understand you knew my brother Brandon as well. All too well, the MSTR of Coin humored. I still carry a token of his esteem from navel to collarbone. Perhaps you choose the wrong man to duel with. Well, it wasn't the man that I choose, my lord, it was Catelyn Tully, a woman worth fighting for. I'm sure you would agree. Lord Stark's expression sullied and Asher grew suspicious. He respected the MSTR of Coin as a practical and intelligent man, however he did not trust him, nor anyone other than his kin or the Starks, who would be his kin as well in time. Speaking of his kin, where's Uncle Stannis? I'm afraid, nephew, Renly said, that my elder brother left for Dragonstone shortly after you left for Winterfell. That does make sense. Lord Aaron said he was researching something Uncle Stannis told him, and maybe he thought he was in danger too. I humbly beg your pardon, your highness, my lord, the oldest man in the room, Grand Maester Pycelle spoke. Asher always wondered how his word did not get muffled in his beard. Lord Stark smiled. Grand Maester. How many years has it been? You were a young man. And you served another king. The room became silent until the old man blinked and reached into his cloak pocket. How forgetful of me, this belongs to you now. He handed to Lord Eddard the badge of his office, before leaning back in his chair. Should we begin? Asher nodded. Let's get it over with. Lord Stark looked bemused. Without the king. Winter is maybe coming, Renly replied, but I'm afraid the same cannot be said for my brother. That's why I came along. Asher said, sitting down in the king's chair between Lord Stark and Grand Maester. Sora hopped off Asher's shoulder and onto the table. The Grand Maester began stroking the bird. Varys continued the train of thought about the king. His Majesty has many cares, he entrusts some small matters to us, that we might lighten the load. We are the lords of small matters here. Lord Baelish said as Renly handed a parchment to Lord Eddard. The hand of the king sat and opened it as Renly informed the council. My brother instructs us to stage a tournament in honor of Lord Stark's appointment as Hand of the King. Asher rolled his eyes and sunk into the chair, just as I thought. Father will use any excuse to hold a tournament, his father wanted to hold tourneys to celebrate every one of his visits to King's Landing during his time in the Westerlands. However, Asher convinced him not to, primarily because these tournaments were for him and could simply say no. Not this time. It would have Lord Eddard to say no, and he didn't know if the Quiet Wolf would say no or not. Lord Baelish shared Asher's uncertainty. How much? Lord Stark read it out: 40,000 gold dragons to the champion, 20,000 to the runner-up, and 20,000 to winning archer. Not to mention the cost organizing and holding the event. Asher grimly added, still no melee this time. That's good. Pycelle turned to Lord Baelish, worried, can the treasury bear such expense? We can afford it, the MSTR of coin said, although I was hoping to save the money to pay off the crown's debt. Debt? Lord Eddard looked at Baelish. What do we owe, and to who? 2 million gold, 1.5 to House Lannister, the rest to the Faith. How could he let this happen? The MSTR of coin finds the money, the king and the hand spend it. I will not believe that Lord Arryn allowed Robert to bankrupt the realm. The Grand Maester spoke up. Lord Arryn give wise and prudent advice, but I fear his majesty doesn't always listen. Counting coppers he calls it. Renly added before Asher give his 2 cents, be thankful Lord Stark, we could be much more in debt. If it weren't for Lord Ichigo of Castemir's donation of 1 million gold dragons, then we'd still owe the Iron Bank of Bravos. Lord Eddard sighed, I'll speak with him tomorrow. This tournament is an extravagance we cannot afford. As you will, Lord Baelish said, but still we best make our plan. There will be no plans, the hand said, until I speak to Robert. Silence fell until Lord Stark spoke, forgive my lords, I had a long ride. You are the king's hand, Lord Stark, Varys said, we serve at your pleasure. Perhaps, my lords. Asher said, I can think of a few methods to afford the tourney. And how? Lord Baelish said, leaning back, do you think we can do that? It occurs to me there are several businesses that benefit from tourneys like the inns and the brothels. Yes, Baelish's smile became more fixed, more fake. Asher knew Lord Baelish owned a number of those brothels, but needs must. Renly grinned. Varys raised an eyebrow. Pycelle frowned in contemplation. Lord Stark gestured to the prince to continue. Those business will profit greatly, probably a few thousand dragons along with their usual profits. He looked to Baelish before continuing, I suggest we put a tax on those business. Lord Baelish should know how much they make, let's put a 30% tax on the extra income they make thanks to the tourney, with it we should be able to afford half. My prince, Lord Baelish said, I don't think. My, Lord Baelish, don't you want to save the crown from debt? Baelish remained silent but glared at the prince. And, Asher continued, why not have the participants pay into the prize money, that way they have incentive to fight at their best, it'll defiantly make it more entertaining. Don't look at me like that, Lord Baelish, if it goes ahead I'll be jousting as well, so I'll be paying out of my own pocket too. Eddard nodded, see what you can do. Anything else we need to discuss? The 4 council members remained silent and Eddard rubbed his hands over his face. Asher nodded and turned to the Grand Maester with a glare. Lord Stark got up and walked out. Asher held his arm and Sora hopped onto him before he said, well then gentlemen, I think we can this meeting done for the moment. And the council dispersed. Asher walked past the throne and out into the courtyard, he headed for his chambers and bed in Maegor's Holdfast. The royal apartments, a castle within a castle. On the way he saw Brandon Stark talking with the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Ser Barristan Selmy, and Gatsby stood by Summer, so Asher decided to join them. Afternoon. Ser Barristan, the Lord Commander, could claim a place on the small council, but the king never wanted advice from the man who killed for the Mad King, but he'll take advice for 2 who served the Mad King. What is the young Stark here asking about? Asking if any Kingsguard member is willing to take him as a squire. I think you should ask Lord Stark first, both of you. The Lord Commander nodded and Bran looked away, towards the building of the Red Keep. Asher chuckled, you're not thinking of climbing that, are you? Bran looked to his feet before saying, no, of course not. Look me in the eye and tell the truth. Bran looked up and paused. Alright, I was thinking of climbing it. I wouldn't if I were you, one slip and you could end up like Helena Targaryen. The Red Keep is fiercer than Winterfell. Brandon nodded before running off with his dire wolf back to the Tower of the Hand. Entering his chamber and immediately began to change, ready for a bath. When he took of his tunic, Sora flew to his stand. Gatsby took the garment and placed it in the basket for the servants to wash. His personal chamber, his bedroom from almost since his BRTH rested at a far corner, the view of it from outside would show a window close to a turret. However, from the inside no indentation within the room showed itself. In the corner where the turret should have been stood a bookcase. Now as a young boy Asher looked at the record of the holdfast and who slept where, Maegor built the fortress as a safe haven for the royal family should King's Landing ever be invaded. He made a separate room for each of his wives, all 6 of them, and according to the records his second wife Tiana of Pentos lived in his room, and since her death at her husband's hands no one else lived in it. Quite why his mother gave him the room remained a mystery to him. Once he learned of the history of his room Asher knew it held secrets. Tiana served as the mistress of whisperers for her husband and she would have known secrets of the Red Keep, just as Varys supposedly did now, and probably the first person to use said secrets. So he tried the unusually placed bookcase, taking out the books left on it one by one. The last one about Tiana's home city, triggered a mechanism. The bookcase opened out to reveal a spiral staircase, which led into a cave and a hot spring. Asher kept this a secret, but it meant he could have a warm bath without calling a servant. Asher having stripped and pulled out a towel and a new set of clothing, plus his sheathed zanpakuto, opened the secret door and went down the stairs, making sure to close the bookcase after him, and took a bath in the spring. He looked up at an opening in rock formation that he presumed led to another cave, perhaps those secret passageways Maegor made. He knew they existed if the cave did, as well as hearing Varys muttering as he went walkabout, probably going to other entrances to be in rooms to get information. Little concern of his, but on a few occasions he heard the muttering of House Targaryen and mention of the usurper, a title many of his father's critics still used. After many years of hearing Varys say such things he determined the man to be a traitor. Someday, Spider, I swear to the gods I will stop you. His thoughts turned to the spring itself. He wanted to keep it a secret, however. When we're married I'll show Sansa this. I've got a feeling she'll like it. Winterfell housed hot springs as well, so something familiar to her so far from home. He sank further into the water and simply let the warm water take the stress from his muscles. After his soaking in the water he went back up to his room and began practicing his Zanjutsu, the swordsmanship of the Castamere samurai, Lord Ichigo and the captains, Baring Orihime and the captain of Squad 12, Nairi Stansfield, ranked as MSTR swordsman, and his Zanpakuto spirit told him train to their level, in conjunction with Napier. He mastered simple techniques like the Hozuri or cheek slide, a simple but precise slash technique which lightly grazes the target, causing superficial wounds. He used the technique on Joffrey in their duel at Winterfell, only milliseconds, a tiny number of sand grains within an hourglass after putting almost all his force into cutting Lion's tooth in two. As he swung his thoughts turned to why Lord Ichigo decided to supply the Night's Watch with Zanpakuto. His spirit gave him a lecture on the history and powers of the Zanpakuto. Most notably the Hollow, a corrupted soul that lost its heart and thus devours souls to fill its hunger for completion, not just one legendary creature, but in fact countless, and the ancient samurai, calling themselves soul reapers, used their Zanpakuto to purify hollows. The legend of the Long Night plagued his mind, a darkness that lasted a generation, decades of constant winter. Having only been born at the tail end of the last winter, the thought scared him. The cold of the north shocked him. Snowfall in summer, imagine what winter would be like in the north, and imagine that here in King's Landing for gods knows how long. Then he thought of those monsters that caused it, the White Walkers. Maybe they were some form of hollow. It would theoretically explain why Lord Ichigo put so much time and effort into such an endeavor to supply the Night's Watch with more than twice the number of Zanpakuto they needed. Could the White Walkers be purified by the blade in his hand? Legends told Dragonglass could kill them, but what if they could be purified? What were they before they became White Walker? This all of Kaus begs the question: if the Walkers ever did exist, The long night supposedly happened over 8,000 years ago, but there needed to be a reason for the wall to exist, and the so-called wildlings didn't seem sufficient a reason to create a wall as tall as a mountain and stretching from coast to coast. And Bran did mention a message from the wall, wildlings rushing south, for some reason. The young Stark boy also mentioned rumors from roaming rangers making their way south to recruit. A ranger escaped a White Walker only just thanks to a person dressed in black, but not a ranger or even a brother of the Night's Watch, sounded either like a mysterious knight or a member of the Castamere squads, most probably Squad 2. If it was a member of Squad 2 then that would explain Lord Ichigo's sudden interest in defending the wall, but how did he or she get that far north and past the wall? At that moment a knock sounded at the door. Asher finished his swing. Just a moment, he said, sheathing his blade. Come in. A servant opened the door. Your Highness, the king wishes you to have supper with him in his chambers. All right, thank you. He left the room, his pets following quickly. The king took a massive swing of wine as Asher took the plate with the leftovers down on the floor for Gatsby, and Sora hopped off the table to join in the meal. His father put his glass down. So, he said, wiping off the dribble of the purple liquid from his chin, I heard Ned had his first small council today. Yes, I'm not sure if you would have liked it if you had attended. Why not? Because Lord Eddard learned of the debt the realm is in. At some point tomorrow he will be speaking to you. About what? Guess father. Why is it you? Leave me to think, boy. A king is supposed to be smart. He then sighed. Honestly, I don't think I should have been there myself. Both Lord Eddard and me had only just arrived from the ride into King's Landing. Why did you break away with us? I want to make sure my betrothed was okay. The king nodded. She'll make a fine woman of the court. I hope so. If not, then I could easily arrange both of us to return to Castamere. Leave us again? You know my views, father. Yes, yes, and the sky's blue. You can be stubborn at times, you know that. I learn from the best. He smirked. His father remained silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. Away with you, boy, before I die laughing. We defiantly don't want that. The prince got up but smirked again. But my, isn't that a bit hypocritical? Didn't you say you wanted, and I quote, to eat, drink and wear your way to an early grave? The way you act, boy, I'll never have the chance. I only do that when you've got prostitutes. I just don't want that to be a part of your legacy. And with that the prince and his pets left. Asher started again with his Zenjutsu, making each slice precise, and fast, unlike a knight, trained to put strength in his attacks first. Samurai training focused on speed and precision. Strength took second billing. As Lord Ichigo once put it, what's the point of being able to crush a man's skull single-handedly if you can't move that hand fast enough to keep it from being cut off in a fight? With speed and precision, Asher didn't need to waste his strength, especially on opponents he knew he could not outmatch in strength. Ser Gregor Clegane came swiftly to mind. He knew one day he would fight that man, and he needed to be ready for it. Another knock sounded and Asher sighed, sheathing his sword once more. Yes. The door opened and Lord Eddard walked in. Forgive me, my prince, but I wanted to talk with you about what you said on trust in the small council. I see. Take the chair, I need to rest my arms. So the prince sat on the bed. All right, Lord Stark, who should we start with? Is there anyone in King's Landing I can trust? Well, apart from Uncle Stannis, and he's left, Ser Barristan is the only one I recommend, though he never sits on the council. It's curious that Uncle Stannis left without giving us notice. You two would have worked great together. I mean, the council was more or less run by both him and Lord Aaron. What of the other council member? Grand Maester Pycelle seems a good man. Asher shook his head. Pycelle, though he's meant to serve the whole realm, is loyal to House Lannister above all others. Nearly every council meeting I've attended he subtly speaks in the interest of my maternal house. He was in fact the one who advised the Mad King to let Grandfather Tywin into the capital, thus starting the sake of King's Landing. Also, he pretends to be frail. He's lot fitter in body and mind than he lets on. I play along with him. The Duke of Winterfell nodded before the prince continued. Uncle Renly, I'd say, is a trustworthy man, however he's unsuitable to be MSTR of law. He had no administrative skills, leaves his duties to those directly below him. That's how Yano Slint became corrupt. Uncle Renly gives absolutely no oversight. Father simply gave him the position to keep a Lannister loyalist from filling that chair. I see, Varys, the prince's face turned grim. He's up to something. I've got my suspicions he's still a Targaryen loyalist. We need to watch him. Lord Stark frowned and looked away briefly, and Baelish. He's a fine MSTR of coin, I will give him credit for that, especially with some subtle suggestions from me, but I digress. You of all people should be careful about him. He's got a web of espionage nearly as extensive as the spiders. The hand got up and paced the room. My wife trusts him, they grew up together. He too honest to her. To her maybe, or perhaps he wants to manipulate her. He doesn't have the skill of a Northman, his scar proves that, but he has the skill of a Southerner in excess. Lord Baelish's loyalties are to him alone, everything he does is to his own benefit. Lord Stark clenched his fist. Asher understood, if someone did that to Sansa he would beat that person to a pulp. The hand sat down and rubbed his temples. Thank you, Your Highness, it's given me a lot to think about. That's how we do things down here. The Duke nodded. Can I ask for your help? In the council? Of course. Well, yes, I would like your help there, but this is about Arya. Oh. I found her practicing with a sword in her room. I'd like someone to train her in swordsmanship, and from what I saw with your time in Winterfell you've got the best skill. You mean train Arya as a samurai? It's possible, however I'm just an honorary samurai. You need a proper one to train her. Send a message to Castamere. I'll do that, but I'm not sure if Lord Ichigo will send anyone. At least you've helped. One more question, do you think Jon Arryn died naturally? That's something I've wanted to talk to you and Father about since Winterfell. No, I don't. I'm sure he was assassinated. Can you be sure? He spoke with me a few hours before he died. He stood perfectly straight, had no trace of illness in his voice, and never suffered from anything. Healthy men don't suddenly die naturally. The quiet wolf nodded, got up and left. Asher got up from the bed and sat at his desk to write his message. Night fell by the time he finished, so he wouldn't send Sora until after the Raven got breakfast the next morning. Asher sighed and laid back on the bed, putting his head to his pillow. What a day. Gatsby whimpered and the prince looked over. The tiger dog rested on his bed made of deer pelts and the furs of other creatures from the Kingswood, all of whom Asher and Gatsby killed. In fact, they kept many spare in a large cupboard space in the chamber, as well as a large old book and a finely made chest. 2 things he obtained in bravos with Lord Ichigo. What the matter? Gatsby got up and peered at his bed, then back to Asher. Something to do with your bed. The dog patted a pawn down once for yes. Don't you like it? 2 taps of his pawn, no. Then what could involve a bed for a dog? Then a new thought hit him. This is about the dire wolves, isn't it? Gatsby barked and let his tongue out. The Starks didn't bring any beds for Lady Nymeria or Summer. You want to give them beds? The tiger dog nodded vigorously. Then the prince smirked. I bet you want the best one to go to Lady, don't you? Again enough bark. Tell you what, we get all the pelts and furs of animals you've killed single-handedly and make that lady's bed. I bet she'll be impressed. Gatsby's tongue licked the prince. Stop, boy, down. We'll start tomorrow after breakfast and after I said Sora to Castamere. That okay? The dog barked. With that Asher changed into his nightclothes and went to bed. The imp sat at the fire next to Jon Snow, Lord Eddard Stark's BSTRD, as his uncle Benjen Stark brought a couple of the new recruits to sat with them. Both had their hands tied. Ah, he said, looking to Jon, rapists. They were given a choose, no doubt, castration or the wall. Most choose the knife. Jon, stay quiet, and looked away. Tyrion smirked, not impressed by your new brother. Lovely thing about the watch, you discard your old family and get a new one. He returned to his book. Why do you read so much? The BSTRD asked. Look at me and tell me what you see, came the swift response. This a trick? What you see is a dwarf. If I'd been born a pheasant, they might have left me out in the woods to die. Alas, I was born a Lannister of Casterly Rock, things are expected of me, my father was Hand of the King for 20 years. Until your brother killed that king. The imp looked up both hurt and amused. Yes, until my brother killed him. Life is full of these little ironies. My sister married the new king and my repulsive nephew will be king after him. I must do my part for the honor of my house, wouldn't you agree? But how? Well, my brother has his sword, and I have my mind, but the mind needs books like a sword needs whetstone. He reopened his book, that why I read so much Jon Snow. Any you? What's your story bstrd? He felt a shiver down his skin, like a cold knife being drawn down his back. Ask me nicely and maybe I'll tell you, dwarf. Tyrion chuckled, a bstrd boy with nothing to inherit, off to join the ancient order of the Night's Watch. He turned to the captive recruits, alongside his valiant brothers in arms. The Night's Watch protects the realm. Ah yes, against all the monsters your wet nurse warned you about. You're a smart boy, you don't believe that nonsense. The boy remained silent as the imp grabbed a wine carrier. He took a swig to warm himself after the shiver, both throwing it to Snow. Anything's better with some wine in the belly. Snow took it and down a good portion of the purple liquid. The imp grinned and returned to his book. However, he then looked up to glimpse the 13 Castamere squad members. They all sat around their own fire close to the large carts. The only captain, the man Asher identified as Kojiro Kamioka, sat with a bottle in his hand talking. Every now and then they would look towards him and the others going to the wall, but never directly. Jon give the wine carrier back and Tyrion test the weight. He would not have enough to last him to the wall. He closed his book and walked over. Would you care for extra company? Not a lot, Lord Tyrion. Kamioka said, shifting slightly to give the dwarf some space before turning back. As I was saying in the dream, there was this man who could pass off for a Stark. He wore white and had a number 1 tattooed to the back of his hand. I tried to negotiate my way out of a fight, but in the end we did battle, although halfway in this lovely lady named Lisa appeared and pulled me out so 2 of her friends could finish him off. For some reason I knew her. That's your most vivid dream, Captain, one of the members said. Kojiro nodded. I swear it feels more like a memory. Anyone else? No? He shrugged and took a swig from the bottle. Tyrion saw the clear liquid dribble and his eyebrows frowned. What's that you drinking? The captain of Squad 8 looked down before handing the bottle over. It's called sake, made from rice malt. Tyrion took the bottle, took a sniff, then a swig. It tastes like ale. Wow, my lord, you are no lightweight. Most first-time sake drinkers would react more aggressively, and humorously. Can I ask what you're doing up here? Asher mentioned something about swords. Lord Ichigo commands we arm the Night's Watch with Zanpakuto. And why? Something tells him they'll need them. Tyrion frowned his eyebrows before getting up and walking back to Snow. That chill came back and he looked around. Since his talk with Jon Snow the night before Asher and Joffrey's duel, he felt like eyes stared at him, and always went around the bstrd. Something about this boy don't fit. Just then a member of the Castamere forces sat down. Beg pardon, but do any of you mind? The sake's beginning to take hold on Captain Kamioka. His lieutenant isn't here to knock him out. Both shook their head and he sat down before looking to Snow. Beg pardon, sir. Jon Snow, I'm no sir. The squad member looked up and to the side before looking back. Beg pardon, Snow, but does your family have any history of being wargs? Benjen Stark looked up. The Night's Watch talk of a Gaylord Stark who could control the mind of ravens. Tyrion held in his laughter. Gaylord? Benjen rolled his eyes. When he served on the wall he shortened his name to Lord Stark. He looked to the squad member. Why do you ask about this? Well, we have 1 or 2 wargs in Castamere and the signs they give of match those in your brother Brandon Stark. You can't be serious, Tyrion blurted out. Men can't just put their minds in other animals. There's no such thing as magic. The squad member grinned and pointed his finger at Tyrion. Hado number 1, show. Suddenly Tyrion felt a force hit him and he fell over into the snow. As the imp got up, as saw another squad member quickly rush over and smack his associate on the back of the head. What did Lord Ichigo say about using Kido outside of Castamere? Only use it in emergencies, but the imp was asking for it. It doesn't matter, you'll be hearing about from your captain and Lord Ichigo when we get back. Tyrion shook the snow of him and looked around. Everyone just stared at what occurred. Magic does exist, maybe there is some truth to what the Night's Watch are saying. Tyrion looked down from the balcony of Castle Black beside Lord Commander Jorah Mormont and Captain Kamioka as Jon Snow fought off every recruit he went up against. One of them bled from his nose after being hit with a training sword and another got knocked to the ground. The next Jon literally threw. Next. The trainer called and another walked up. Jon blocked both attacked and then used his opponent's sword to block the oncoming attack of another recruit. Jon kicked the second down and then punched the first to the ground. After that the trainer called it a day. Charming man. Tyrion said about the trainer. I don't need him to be charming, Lord Mormont said, I need him to turn this bunch of thieves and runaways into men of the Night's Watch. And how's that going, Commander Mormont? Slowly. If you want, Kamioka said, when we return to Castamere we could send a seated officer of Squad 11 to help train them. I don't think that'll help, Ser Alistair wouldn't like another man doing his job. I get you, a squad member walked up, Captain, we've finished unloading the Asachi. Good, care to see them, Lord Mormont? Alright, I'll send for Maester Eamon and a blacksmith, let's see your lord's craftsmanship. Tyrion stayed and watched as they left, before noticing a bunch of the recruits who Ned Stark's BSTRD took care of followed said Jon Snow into the supplies hut. He quickly followed. At the door he heard a struggle, something about throwing someone off the wall, so Tyrion opened the door and walked in, seeing the recruits holding Snow with a knife at his throat. A cold breath brushed against his ear and the imp knew what to do. The recruits looked back. What are you looking at, half-man? The one with the broken nose said. I'm looking at you. Yes, you've got an interesting face, very distractive faces, all of you. And what do you care about our faces? It's just I think they would look marvelous decorating spikes in King's Landing. Perhaps I'll write to my sister the Queen about it. Or, a Castamere squad member said walking in, I should tell Captain Hills of Squad 11 that you've killed a BSTRD. He gets angry at people mistreating bastards, he believes them his spiritual kin. The recruit's eyes widened. Tyrion smirked. The reputation of the fearsome Hills of Castamere, the third most feared warrior in the Westerlands, behind the mountain, and Lord Ichigo reached across all the seven kingdoms. Quickly few of the recruits let go of Jon. One ran out the door followed by the squad member. Tyrion walked up to the BSTRD who finally spoke. Everyone knew what this place was, and no one told me. No one but you. My father knew, and he left me to rot at the wall all the same. Gren's father left him too, Tyrion said, looking the one with the broken nose outside a farmhouse when he was 3. PYP, the other one looked up, was caught stealing a wheel of cheese, his little sister hadn't eaten in 3 days. He was given a choice, his right hand or the wall. I've been asking the Lord Commander about them, fascinating stories. They hate me because I'm better than they are. It's a lucky thing none of them are trained by a MSTR at arms like your Ser Roderick. I don't imagine any of them have held a real sword before they came here. With that Tyrion left. He walked to where the Lord Commander went. Finding him with the aging Maester of Castle Black, Eamon, and the Castamere squad members standing before an open crate with a countless number of swords. A blacksmith stood inspecting one wide-eyed. You say Lord Ichigo made each one. His skill is better than anyone else I know. Captain Kamioka nodded. He averages 35 a week, he's done that for almost 5 years, the blacksmith just starred. Tyrion almost mentioned the impossibility. Forging a single sword could take days if not weeks before remembering the spell used on him, magic swords. What next? He then listened to the captain talk to the Lord Commander and the Maester. Each and every member get his own sword, which is their sword for life. They must keep it with them at all times, all times. No other man may have it, not even hold it. He then gave Mormont one. Also, if men start say they're hearing voices coming from the swords, just ignore them, it'll make sense at some point. Eamon, Mormont, and Tyrion all frowned their eyebrows. The imp looked at the swords. The more I hear of Castamere the stranger it becomes. His curiosity over the land of House Kurosaki just increased. I am going to have a long conversation with Asher when I return to the Red Keep. The samurai began picking up the blade and carry them to the armory. Later in the dining hall both Tyrion and Captain Kamioka spoke with a Night's Watch recruiter named Yorin. They discussed the strangest things they ate in their lives. Yorin started, "Bear's ball." "You're joking," the imp laughed as the captain of Squad 8 took a swig of his sake. "And his brains and his guts, his lungs and his heart, all fired in his own fat. Well, when you 100 miles north of the wall and you ate your last meal a week ago, you leave nothing for the wolves." He took a drink. "And how do bear's ball taste?" "Bit chewy." The two laughed, then harder when the captain swallowed his sake strong and began to cough. Once the joke tailed out, Yorin looked to both of them. "And what about you, my lord, captain, what's the strangest thing you've eaten?" Tyrion thought for a moment. "Do Dornish girls count?" The three laughed long and strong. Kamioka wiped a tear. "As for me," he said still chuckling, "I've nothing against Lady Orihime, but her cooking? Acquired taste is an understatement." Yorin laughed as his eyebrows lifted. "Your lady cooks her own meals and you've had some?" "She was lowborn herself, and as she's captain of Squad 4 she considers me an equal." "Much the same can't be said round these parts." Yorin said, "Is it true what they call her the tallest woman in Westeros?" "Oh yes, she's 6'6". Yorin's eye widened. "So," Tyrion began, "you roam the Seven Kingdoms collaring pickpockets and horse thieves and bring them here as eager recruits?" "Aye, well, it's not all of them done bad things, some of them just poor lad looking for steady feed, some of them highborn lads looking for glory. Better chance finding food than glory." Tyrion said as Benjen Stark entered the room, "The Night's Watch is a joke to you, is it?" The first ranger asked as he stood before the imp, "Is that what we are, Lannister? An army of jesters in black? You don't have enough men to be an army, and aside from Yorin here none of you are practically funny." The wolf pup sat down. "I hope we've provided you with some good stories too when you're back in King's Landing. It's something to think about when you're drinking your wine down there, enjoying your brothels. Half the boys you've seen training will die north of the wall. Might be a wildling's axe that gets them, might be sickness, might just be the cold, they die in pain, and they do it so plump little lords like you can enjoy the summer afternoons in peace and comfort." Tyrion turned Yorin and Kamioka. "Do you think I'm plump?" Neither said anything, so Tyrion looked back to the first ranger. "Listen, Benjen, can I call you Benjen?" "Call me what you like. I'm not sure what I've done to offend you. I have great admiration for the Night's Watch, and I have great admiration for you as First Ranger. My brother once told me, that nothing before the word but really counts." Tyrion smirked. "Until my journey up here I would have said, but I don't believe in White Walkers, and I'm still going to say the only difference between us the wildlings is that when the wall went up our ancestors happened to be on the right side." "You're right," Benjen said, "the wildling are no different from us, a little rougher maybe, for they're made of meat and bone. I know how to track them and kill them. It's not the wildlings giving me sleepless nights. You've never been north of the wall, so don't tell me what's out there." First Ranger, they all turned to Captain Kamioka. "This is the truth, Lord Ichigo greatly supports the Night's Watch, that's why he's sent the Asachi." Benjen nodded and got up. "You going below?" Yorin asked, putting his drink down and embracing the brother of the order. "Keep well, keep warm. Enjoy the capital, brother." "Oh, I always do." And with that the first ranger left. Tyrion watched the Stark go. "I think he's starting to like me." The three men chuckled before Tyrion asked, "Going below?" "Aye," Yorin said, refilling his pint. "Into the tunnel and out the other side. He'll be north of the wall for a month or two." "So, you're heading down to King's Landing too?" "Aye, day after tomorrow. I get about half of my recruits from their dungeons. Let's share the road. I could do with some decent company. I travel a bit on the grubby side, my lord." "Not this time, we'll be staying at the finest castles and inns, no one turns away a Lannister. Me and others will join as far as the Crossroads Inn, after that we head back to Castamere." Tyrion nodded. He wondered if he could talk with the captain about the oddities of Castamere. Captain, am I permitted to? If you want to know about the things you've seen us do, sorry, Lord Ichigo wants it kept quiet and secret. Tyrion's face fell, knowing Asher he won't talk about this either, and I can't get him drunk. The next morning Tyrion and Captain Kamioka sat in the dining hall with Lord Mormont and Maester Aemon. Through the ajar door he saw Snow fighting with Gren, telling him what he did wrong and what to improve. Maester Aemon spoke. How many winters have you seen? Both of you. 8, Tyrion said. No, 9, then the captain spoke. 4 for me. All of them brief. Well, Tyrion said, they say the winter of my BRTH was 3 years long, Maester Aemon. This summer has lasted 9, but reports from the Citadel tell us the days grow shorter. Starks are always right eventually. Winter is coming. This one will be long, and dark things will come with it. We've been capturing wildlings, Lord Mormont said, more every month. They're fleeing south. The one who flees say they've seen the White Walkers. Tyrion nearly made a comment about mermaids being seen by the fishermen of Lannisport, but he remembered the magic, so he remained silent as the Lord Commander continued. One of our own rangers swore he saw one kill his companions, and still does. How did he survive then? He claims a man dressed head to toe in black with a strange sword stabbed it in the back and disappeared in a flash of light. We lock him up thinking him mad until we got the message from Lord Ichigo. That man, Captain Kamioka said, was a member of Squad 2, they travel all along the Seven Kingdoms gathering information. He must have gotten past the wall. Mormont said bitterly. And Aemon spoke again, the Night's Watch is the only thing standing between the realm and what lies beyond, and it has become an army of undisciplined boys and tired old men. There are less than 1,000 of us now, we can't man the other castles on the wall, we can't properly patrol the wilderness, we've barely enough resources to keep our men armed and feed. Your sister, Lord Mormont said to Tyrion, sits by the side of the king, tell her we need help. When winter does come, Maester Aemon said, gods help us all if we're not ready. Captain Kamioka stood up, Lord Commander, Maester, if you need assistance just call on Castamere, Lord Ichigo respects your order greatly. You protect Westeros from gods knows what, Lord Ichigo greatly approves of that. Really? Tyrion said, you weren't just saying that to Benjen Stark. Of course not, he believes in protecting those dearest to him. If he could he'd extend it to anyone. His first name means, the one protector, and he made it clear in his house words, it's not a boast like, hear me roar, or ours is the fury, or a warning like, winter is coming, but a promise, I will protect. As the captain left the room the three left stunned. Tyrion lay back in his chair, those are the words of House Kurosaki. If keeping his people's safety is his goal in life, then no wonder he's so popular with the lowborn. Now I see where Asher gets it, he took a swig of his drink. Night came down fast, the imp looked out the world north and wondered, what lied beyond. If the White Walker did exist, then the Night's Watch need as much help as possible, if they do exist I bet they won't like this. With that thought Tyrion pulled down the waistband of his trouser and started to urinate it off the edge of the world. He finished and readjusted his clothing and turned round to find Snow and Kamioka standing there. Kamioka smirked, I bet it hasn't reached the ground yet. When it does, the imp said walking up, the PSS will probably be frozen. Snow finally spoke, I'm sorry to see you leave Lannister. It's either me or this cold, and it doesn't appear to be going anywhere. Will you stop at Winterfell on your way B? I expect I will, along with Kamioka and his men, gods know there aren't many feather beds between here and King's Landing. Tell Robb, Theon and Rickon I miss them, and I'd visit if I could. Of course, he held out his hand, take care Snow. Farewell my lord. Goodbye Snow, Kamioka said, take care of that dire wolf and when you get your Zanpakuto, bond with it, and listen carefully. And the captain of Squad 8 followed the imp back to the barracks of Castle Black. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 4. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Magi tale Welkin on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.